First, he said there were no parties. Then the video landed, blowing that defence out the water. Next, he said he was sicker than furious when he found out about the parties, until it turned out that he himself was at the Downing Street garden party. Then last week he said he didn't realise he was at a party, and surprise, surprise, no one believed him. So this week, he's got a new defence. Nobody warned me that it was against the rules. That's it. Nobody told him. Since the Prime Minister wrote the rules, why on earth does he think that his new defence is going to work for him?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, he talks about the rules, and let me repeat what I said to the honourable lady across the aisle earlier on. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we must wait for the outcome of the inquiry. But I renew what I've said, Mr. Speaker. But when it comes to his view,
nobody believes what you said.
Can we have a little less? I want to this Prime Minister, like I wanted to leader of the opposition. I want the same courtesy from both sides. Prime Minister.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Speaker, if we'd listened to the right honourable gentleman about COVID restrictions, which is the substance of his question, then, Mr. Speaker, we would have been in lockdown after July.
If the Prime Minister misleads Parliament, should they resign?
So, Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. The right honourable gentleman is continuing to ask a series of questions which he knows will be fully addressed by the inquiry. He is wasting this House's time. He's wasting the people's time, Mr. Speaker. He continues to be completely irrelevant.
Last year we were told by the Prime Minister there were no Downing Street parties. Then it turned out there were parties, but we were assured that no rules were broken. Last week, we heard the rules may have been broken, but that he thought it was a work event. And now yesterday, from the man who wrote the rules, it was, well, nobody told me what those rules were. Mr. Speaker, 5 weeks ago, the people of North Shropshire were clear, and the people of North East Fife are being clear to me now. No matter the excuse, there is no excuse for taking the British people for fools. Will the Prime Minister agree it is now time for him to resign?
No, Mr. Speaker, but what I can tell her is that, as I said to the House last week, I apologise sincerely for any misjudgments that were made, but she must contain her impatience, Mr. Speaker, and wait for the inquiry next week before she draws any of the conclusions that she's just asserted.
First he claimed there were no parties. Then he wasn't present. Then he admitted he was at them, but he didn't know it was a party. And then, Mr. Speaker, the latest sorry excuse is really the most pathetic of them all. Nobody told me. Nobody told me. Nobody told the Prime Minister he was breaking his own rules. Absolutely pathetic. The Prime Minister, you know, what a look. What a look. The Prime Minister laughing once again, laughing at the British public. The Prime Minister is taking the public for fools. Nobody believes him. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility? Resign. Go, Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker, but I thank him for his question again, and let me just remind him that there's an inquiry that is due to conclude. I believe he is wrong in what he asserts, Mr. Speaker, but we'll have to wait and see what the inquiry says. But, Mr. Speaker, I think the most important thing from the point of view of the UK government is that we're coming out of the restrictions that we've been in. I'm delighted to see that that's happening in Scotland as well. And that is very largely thanks to the wonderful cooperation that we continue to see across the whole of the UK, though you wouldn't believe it to hear it from him.
Like many on these benches, I spent weeks and months defending the Prime Minister against often angry constituents. I've reminded them of his success in delivering Brexit and on the vaccine and many other things. But I expect my leaders to shoulder the responsibility for the actions they take. Yesterday, he did the opposite of that. So I'll remind him of a quotation altogether too familiar to him of Leo Amery to Neville Chamberlain. You have sat there too long for all the good you have done. In the name of God, go.
Order. Prime Minister.
I must say to the right honourable gentleman, I don't know what he's talking about, but what I can tell him, I don't know what quotation he's alluding to that he's referring, but what I can tell him is that I think I've told this House repeatedly throughout this pandemic, I take full responsibility for everything done in this government and throughout the pandemic.